COV families. This week we're going to read a story called A Giant Staircase to Heaven. And this is the story of the Tower of Babel, found in Genesis chapter 11. In our Jesus Storybook Bible by Sally Lloyd Jones, you'll find the story on page 48 if you want to read along with me. Noah and his family lived in the land, and his children had children, and those children had more children, and then those children had even more. Well, you get the picture, until there were lots of people on the earth once more. Now back then, everyone spoke exactly the same language. So you didn't need to learn Swahili or Japanese or anything, because you could say hello to anyone and they knew what you meant. One day, everyone was talking and they came up with an idea. Let's build ourselves a beautiful city to live in. It can be our home, and we'll be safe forever and ever. Then they had another idea. And let's build a really tall tower to reach up to heaven. Yes, they said, we'll say, look at us up here, and everyone will look up at us, and we'll look down on them, and then we'll know we are something. We'll be like God. We'll be famous and safe and happy, and everything will be all right. So they got to work. Brick by brick, the tower grew higher and higher, until it soared above the city, touching the sky. They built stairs in the tower to climb to the top. It was like a giant staircase to heaven. Look, they cheered. We're the ones. See what we can do with our very own hands? They were quite pleased with themselves, but God wasn't pleased with them. God could see what they were doing. They were trying to live without Him, but God knew that wouldn't make them happy or safe or anything. If they kept on like this, they would only destroy themselves, and God loved them too much to let that happen, so He stopped their plans. One morning, they went to work as usual, but everything was different. Their words were all new and funny. You see, God had given each person a completely different language. Suddenly, no one understood what anyone else was saying. Someone would say, "How do you do?" And the other person thought they said, "How ugly are you?" It wasn't funny. You could be saying something nice, like "such a lovely morning," and get a punch in the nose because they thought you said, "Hush up, you're boring." You couldn't even say "pardon" to check if you heard right because no one understood that word either. It wasn't easy to work together after that. As you can only imagine, people were always quarreling and fighting and getting in a dreadful muddle and becoming grumpier and grumpier until at last they were all too cross to keep on building and just had to stop. After that, people scattered all over the world, which is how we ended up with so many different languages to this day. You see, God knew, however high they reached, however hard they tried, people could never get back to heaven by themselves. People didn't need a staircase. They needed a rescuer. Because the way back to heaven wasn't a staircase, it was a person. People could never reach up to heaven, so heaven would have to come down to them. And one day it would.
Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth, over the face of the whole earth." Woo! the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth. They left off building that city and they called it Babel. They built a tower. They told themselves, this is our finest hour. And they called it Babel. But God burst that bubble and they left that city unfinished rubble, and they called it Babel. The voice name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. And they called it Babel. They built a tower. They told themselves, this is our finest hour. And they called it Babel. But God burst that bubble, and he left that city unfinished rubble, and they called it Babel.
Genesis 11:9.
Our Bible verse for this week comes from Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. It says, "From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth." Genesis 11:9b. Let's say it together. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. Genesis 11:9b. We have 2 activities to go along with our story this week. Our nursery families can put together this craft to remember that God changed the people's languages as the tower grew taller and taller. Our preschool and elementary families can play this board game to remember that building a tower was not the way to heaven. People can't reach heaven on their own. We needed a rescuer to come down to us, and that rescuer is Jesus. To assemble the craft for our nursery-age children, you will first want to color it in. After the template is colored, cut the scene across the dotted line and cut out the tower. Next, a slit needs to be made to make room for the tower. Use one side of a pair of scissors or an X-Acto knife to cut across the dotted line in the side of the mountain. Now you will simply feed the tower up through the back of the template so it can get taller and taller. Read some of the words from the story as the tower grows. Brick by brick, the tower grew higher and higher until it soared above the city, touching the sky. The people were pleased, but God was not pleased. The board game for our preschool and elementary age children can be played as is or colored in first before collecting the pieces to play. To play this game, you will need a way to move forward on the board. The Riley family liked using a die better, but a spinner from another game would also work. If you don't have either of those or a way to roll a number on your phone, you can flip a coin, heads moving you one place and tails moving you 2 places. You will also need a pile of Legos, Duplos, or building blocks. The rules of this game are pretty simple. Each player starts with 1 Lego as their game piece. You will want to make every player a different color so you can tell each player apart. Take turns rolling and moving ahead on the board. If you land on a square with directions, you must follow them. Some possible directions are taking Legos, losing Legos, losing a turn, or moving backwards. Continue moving around the board until every player has reached the finish. This might mean that the last player has to keep rolling until they finally reach the end. Once every player has reached the end, you will then count how many blocks make up each player's tower. What's different about this game is that the first player to reach the finish is not the winner. The player with the tallest tower is also not the winner. In this game, the player with the shortest tower at the end of the game wins. Hopefully, playing this game will remind our preschool and elementary age children that we can't build our way to heaven. We have the privilege of knowing from John chapter 14, verse 6, that Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. All right, so we've got my giant tower,
which has 7.
Boston's in second, and then Evie 1.
Woo! Can we play again?
You want to play again?